Haunted Doll House. When Emily moved into the old Victorian house left to her by her late grandmother, she expected creaky floorboards, drafty halls, and the occasional unsettling groan from the pipes. What she didn't expect was the small, padlocked door in the back of the attic, hidden behind decades of dust-covered furniture and boxes. Curiosity got the better of her, and after several days of searching, she found the tiny brass key tucked inside a false drawer in the master bedroom. The lock clicked open with a sound that echoed too loudly in the silence, and Emily stepped into the dark space beyond. The room was cold, despite the summer heat outside. Faint light from the attic bulb spilled across shelves lining the walls, each one filled with dolls, porcelain, glass-eyed, and incredibly lifelike. Emily's breath caught in her throat. The resemblance was unmistakable. Each doll looked like a member of her family, her mother, her brother, even herself as a child. Their glass eyes followed her as she moved deeper into the room. She knelt to inspect one that looked like her cousin Daniel, and as her fingers brushed its cheek, a chill raced up her spine. The skin was soft, too soft for porcelain. Disturbed, Emily brought one of the dolls downstairs to examine it more closely under better light. She discovered tiny, hand-sewn stitches at the back of the neck, like something had been inserted and sewn shut. With trembling hands, she cut the thread. Inside, buried in a cavity lined with a strange waxy substance, was a photograph, one she recognized. It was a picture of Daniel, taken at a family reunion, but aged and stained, with something scratched into the back, "Preserve the precious." That night, the temperature in the house plummeted. Emily woke to whispers seeping through the floorboards. She crept to the attic, only to find the hidden room door wide open. The shelves were empty. Her heart pounded as the dolls emerged from the shadows, moving now, heads jerking, limbs twitching, glassy eyes unblinking. One stepped forward. It looked just like her, but older, worn, with cracked lips and faded hair. "Time to return," it rasped in her own voice. They found the house empty weeks later. Dust covered everything, except the attic. In the hidden room, the dolls had returned to their places, one more added to the collection. A perfect replica of Emily stood among them, smiling with glass eyes and stitched skin. The door was locked again, and the key was gone. Years passed, and the house stood untouched, its windows staring blankly at the street like eyes that had seen too much. Locals whispered about it, the doll house, they called it. No one stayed long. Tenants complained of scratching in the walls, of cold spots and whispered voices calling their names. Most never made it through a full night. The realtor gave up trying to sell it, and eventually, the house was simply left to rot. Or so it seemed. One rainy October evening, a young couple named Mark and Lila, drawn by the house's eerie charm and its dirt-cheap price, moved in. Lila, a photographer with a taste for the macabre, was fascinated by the attic and its rumors. Mark warned her not to obsess, but Lila couldn't resist. She combed through the dust, uncovering old journals, yellowed family photos, and eventually, the little brass key hidden in the master bedroom. Just as it had years before, the lock clicked open. Inside, the room was pristine, untouched by time. The shelves gleamed in the flashlight beam, every doll exactly in place. Mark's voice from downstairs echoed faintly, but Lila didn't hear it. Her eyes were fixed on the new addition to the collection, a doll with blonde hair, wide green eyes, and a familiar, crooked smile. She raised her camera, hand shaking. The photo snapped, and in the blink of the flash, the doll's eyes moved. Behind her, the door shut. The lock clicked again. Mark found the attic empty minutes later, her flashlight lying on the floor. No sign of Lila, except the new doll that now sat beside the others, cradling a camera in delicate, waxy hands. On the wall, scratched into the wood, was a new message: she was precious too. Mark didn't sleep that night. He tore through the attic, the basement, every inch of the house, calling Lila's name until his voice broke. He tried the police, but they found no sign of forced entry, no signs of struggle, just her flashlight and camera, and a locked door to a room no one else could seem to open. Mark insisted there was a collection of dolls, but when the police checked, the shelves were empty. He sounded mad. They left him with warnings and pity in their eyes. But Mark knew what he saw. And worse, he had proof. On Lila's camera was the photo she'd taken just before she disappeared. The image was blurry, but there was the doll, unmistakable. It was Lila, down to the mole on her cheek. In the background, something pale and thin was moving in the shadows, something doll-like, but too tall, too broken in its shape. It looked like it was watching her. Mark zoomed in, heart pounding. Behind the shelves, there were eyes. Real ones. Determined to get her back, Mark went back to the attic that night, crowbar in hand. He smashed the lock and forced the door open. This time, the room was different, larger than before, impossibly deep. The shelves stretched on, disappearing into darkness, with hundreds of dolls standing in silent rows. They all turned to look at him. He stepped inside. Behind him, the door creaked and began to close. Mark ran forward, calling Lila's name. From the shadows, a familiar voice whispered, "I'm still here." He found her doll on the farthest shelf, hands outstretched, mouth sewn shut with red thread. He reached for her, but before he could touch her, cold fingers clutched his wrist from behind. A second Lila stepped out of the dark. This one was smiling too widely, her glass eyes gleaming. "You're precious, too," she said. And then the door slammed shut, sealing another soul inside. Outside, the house creaked contentedly in the wind. In the attic, the shelves welcomed one more doll. But the house had underestimated Mark. He wasn't just determined, he was in love. And love, in its fiercest, purest form, is a powerful force. As the door slammed and the dolls began to stir, Mark didn't run. He closed his eyes, clutched Lila's sewn hands, and whispered, "I see you. I love you. Come back to me." A warmth stirred in the room, faint at first, like a single candle in a pitch-black cathedral. The dolls hesitated. Some tilted their heads. The air grew heavier, charged with something old and aching. Lila's doll twitched. Then it breathed. The red threads at her mouth unraveled slowly, one by one, as if responding to his words. Her eyes, no longer glassy, shimmered with tears. "Mark," she gasped, her voice hoarse. Around them, the room began to tremble. Dolls fell from shelves like limp marionettes, their spell breaking as memories and souls long trapped were released into the air, vanishing like mist in sunlight. The walls groaned and cracked, the room itself folding inward like a paper illusion dissolving into dust. Mark held Lila tight as the darkness crumbled around them. They stumbled back through the attic door, coughing and blinking in the sudden warmth of the morning sun streaming through the attic window. The door behind them was gone, nothing but solid wood and dust where it had once been. They made it out of the house that day, hand in hand, never looking back. Months later, the house was condemned and demolished. On the final day, as the wrecking ball swung through the attic, one of the workers swore he saw something, two figures in the window, watching. A man and a woman. Holding hands. Smiling. And then, with a crash, the last of the doll house was gone. No more whispers. No more shelves. Just freedom, at last. Mark awoke in the hospital days later. They told him a neighbor had found him collapsed on the attic floor, clutching an old porcelain doll. There was no sign of Lila. No strange room. The house was just a house. The police chalked it up to grief, stress, maybe carbon monoxide. Mark said nothing. He knew the truth. And in his arms, when he woke, the doll hadn't been porcelain, it had been warm. Lila had whispered something before he blacked out, "Find me again." Months passed. Mark moved out of the house, gave away everything tied to it, tried to start over. He even began to smile again, sometimes. He kept Lila's camera on his desk, her laugh in his memory. He told himself it was over. That he'd escaped. One quiet evening, while unpacking a box in his new apartment, Mark found something he didn't recognize. A small, velvet-lined case. Curious, he opened it. Inside were 3 dolls. One looked like Lila. One looked like him. And the third, still unfinished, was smiling with empty eye sockets. Just waiting. As he stared, he swore their heads turned the tiniest bit toward him, and from deep inside the case came the softest sound. Precious. The lights in the apartment flickered. The room grew cold, and Mark knew he never really left. Mark stumbled back, knocking over the box as the case hit the floor. The dolls didn't move again, not visibly, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they were watching, even without eyes. The unfinished one was the worst. Its skin was pale fabric, its face only half-stitched, and where its eyes should have been were 2 dark pinpricks that seemed to drink in the light. He slammed the case shut, locked it, and buried it in the back of his closet beneath piles of clothes and sealed boxes. Out of sight, out of mind. But the next morning, the case was back, sitting neatly on the kitchen table, perfectly centered, as if waiting for breakfast. This time, all 3 dolls were finished. The Mark doll now wore the same clothes he had worn yesterday. The stitching on its face was eerily precise, down to the scar on his chin from a childhood fall. His hands trembled as he picked it up, and the doll blinked once slowly as if acknowledging him. Mark fled the apartment that day. Hotel rooms, couch surfing, nowhere stayed safe for long. The case followed, always finding him. He burned it once, watched the flames engulf the velvet, the dolls' faces melting in the fire. But the next night, it was back on the motel nightstand, the dolls untouched, still watching. Still waiting. And one day, Mark stopped running. He sat across from the dolls, lit a candle, and stared back. "I don't know what you are," he said quietly, "but if you're going to take me, do it." The dolls smiled, all 3, and then, nothing happened. Nothing changed. The air grew warmer. The candle flickered out. Mark went to bed that night, strangely calm. He slept deeply, dreamlessly, and in the morning, there was a 4th doll, tiny, cradled in the arms of the Lila doll. It had his eyes and it was smiling.